Greetings to you viewers at home, and welcome to another episode of The Dialogue. The subject of my message today is: beware of these false pastors and fake teachers who are running around from church to church, jumping from church to church, and I normally call them church hoppers. So I just want us to understand the meaning of the word church hoppers. A church hopper is someone who frequently moves from one church to another instead of staying committed to a single congregation. They often switch churches because of disobedience, arrogance, and pride. Now Jesus says, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. So these people who are fake pastors, in fact, these fake pastors like going around churches and start causing confusion in the church so that they can end up stealing church members to start their own church. So the other thing that I can say is that these people always focus in self-promotion and they like to compete with true leadership. They show pride, manipulation, and dishonesty. They cannot be corrected or questioned. False pastors become defensive and aggressive and also refuse accountability. So these are folks who always look right but are wrong. They sound spiritual, but they are spiritually clueless. They are immature and misled. So they don't stick to one church. Most of the time they run around. They go to someone who has started a church and they will come there and to start to seek top positions. And before you know it, already they start controlling the church from within. And the Bible says you must be careful of those wolves. Now, when you read the Bible, Jesus says you will know them by their fruit. So false pastors are actually they are false teachers, and in most cases will exist within the church. They don't always come from outside. They can rise among believers, and this makes them harder to recognize. They seek power and control. So they want to be treated like they are above everyone else, and they seek power and they want to control those who are running the church. They discourage questioning or accountability. Their lifestyle doesn't match their message. So most of the time they are full of jealousy and they lack competing. They lack competition. They are not even afraid to compete with the church
leader. With a church
now,
leader.
Here are things that you need to understand about fake called and self-appointed pastors and prophets. So this can help you spiritually alert and grounded. So a genuine and a true pastor is called and sent by God, but fake pastors often appoint themselves without spiritual confirmation, mentorship, or accountability, and they quote verses out of context. They may suddenly declare themselves pastors and apostles, and they normally do this with no clear spiritual growth. They don't even want to go to Bible school. They want to control the church from inside. So they are hopping around, going from church to church, causing confusion in the church, causing divisions. These are people who are sent by Satan, by demons. They don't want to submit to the authority of the church. So they call themselves pastors, but they don't ordain their own church. They don't start their own church. They only go to someone who has started a church, and they would start, being as if they are humble. And before you know it, they preach wrong things through gossip among the church members to divide the church members. So at the end, you find them that they like stealing church members in order to go and start their own churches. So these are dangerous demonic agent of Satan. So beware when you see them in your church. When they enter your church, you must be watchful and alert. Those are agents of darkness with expensive clothes and expensive cars. They don't want to submit to anyone. They call themselves pastors, but they don't want to submit to anyone. They don't have their own church, so they are pastoring. I call them ministers without portfolio. So they cause they cause division, they cause gossips in the church. They like positions, they like to control the pastor, and if the pastor doesn't take their weight, they divided the church. They steal the members and they go and start their own church. So those are criminals. Those are spiritual criminals. They are not pastors. They are spiritual criminals because they cannot start their own church. They move around and then start to cause chaos in other churches. Actually, I normally call them sellouts in suits. You know, they move around with their expensive cars and their suits, but they are afraid to start their own church because they don't like the heaviness. They don't like to take responsibility of the calling. So they call themselves. That doesn't mean that God has called them, because there's no way that God can call you into somebody else's ministry. Says, the Bible says, God is not the author of confusion. So those are false teachers. You must be aware. When you are a young pastor, you have started a church, or an old pastor, your ministry has been there for quite some time. These people, they don't commit to any church. Whenever they come to your church, they want to put their rules forward. They want to change every rules, you know, and most of the time they can't even manage their own families, their own spouses, but they want to tell you, as the pastor, as the founding pastor of the church, they want to tell you what to do. That is demonic. That is satanic. So fake pastors, they don't want to go to Bible college, but they always want to be in charge and to also control somebody else's church. The Bible says in the book of Timothy chapter 2 verse 15, 2 Timothy, it says, study to present yourself approved to God, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You know, so now these people, they move around. They move around. They don't want to go to Bible school, but they want to teach people. Some of them, they couldn't manage their own church. They come from the churches that have collapsed. You know, the churches has collapsed, and now they want to go and play heroes in somebody else's ministry. So you must be careful of those people. They are full of jealousy. They are full of competition, and they are self-centered and selfish. So they like titles. They like titles. Those people, they are dangerous. They are dangerous. They like titles. So those are ministers without portfolio. They don't want to account to anyone. They move from church to church. Every crusade, you see them. They go. They travel around. You know, every church. They travel. Everything called church, you'll find them there. And they won't even stay long there. They will leave it and go to another church. And the moment they enter to another church, they will want to control the whole administration of the church. So if you stand against that, they will go again. They will just depart and go to another church. So they destroy the churches. Those people, they are dangerous. So don't be tempted looking at how they dress, cars they are driving, the money they are having. Those are devil. Those are the agents of Satan. So those are wolves. Those are jackals, you know, in sheep's clothing. Those are jackals in sheep clothing. So they sound like they know the Bible, but they don't know the Bible. Those are criminal. Those are criminal. So if you find someone has started a church and you come and you call yourself a pastor in somebody else's church, that is totally madness. That is chaos. So there's no way you can go to another man's church and you call yourself a pastor in somebody else's church. That is madness. That is madness. That is not scriptural. Because a pastor it's actually a shepherd. You know, it's a shepherd of the church. It's a shepherd of a local pastor. So these are only those are just irresponsible agents of darkness, those who are running around pretending to be born again, but they are spiritual mafias. They are criminals. Don't fall for the way they sing, the way they preach. They preach lies because their life doesn't match their messages. Those are demons in human forms. So I want to encourage you, dear viewers, that we are in the last days. We are in the last days where Satan is approaching churches to destroy them from inside out. You know, in most cases, the devil doesn't come from outside. He comes from right inside the church. So be careful out there, young pastor or old pastor, somebody else, anyone who is in charge of the ministry. Be careful of church hoppers. Church hoppers. Be careful of those people. They are dangerous.